Lopsided trades happen in sports. You gotta risk it to get the biscuit, because if you don't make a move or two to get over the top, chances are you never will. What I'm here to ask you is, what has been some of the most lopsided trades in the MLB over the last 5 years? Well, if you was wondering, wonder no more, because I have 12 trades that I think have been the most unbalanced and damning for some of these franchises. Now, as far as the trades go, I have 3 from 2019, 3 from 2020, 3 from 2021, and 3 from 2022. Obviously, 2023 just happened, so to judge a trade as bad would be very short-sighted, so we're gonna focus on those 4 years. And if you do enjoy the content analysis that Paint the Black Baseball gives you, maybe you can give me a like and subscribe. But now let's get uneven with these lopsided trades. Now, as far as these lopsided trades, I am gonna go in the order of the date that they occurred. I am gonna make one exception though for this one trade, because this move was so dumb in hindsight. All they had to do was hold on to this player and maybe see what more they had. But instead of talking about that, let's talk about the trade. On December 22nd, 2019, the Texas Rangers acquire Adolis Garcia for cash consideration. Adolis Garcia just had himself a monster postseason on the way to the Rangers winning the World Series. That should just let you know right there. A player of that caliber should not be traded for cash consideration. But how did we get here? If you take a look at his stats, his first year with the Cards, he only had 17 plate appearances. Apparently, those plate appearances were bad enough that they were ready to trade him for cash considerations. And then once given a chance to start full time, Adolis delivered for the Rangers, as he had a 3 WAR season, 3.6, and just his previous season he had a 4.8 WAR, and like I said, the monster postseason where he was hitting home run after home run. I know the St. Louis Cardinals had to be thinking to themselves, why the hell did we give this guy up for cash considerations? Do let it be known that the Cardinals did have an outfield logjam, but even if trading someone for cash considerations is literally saying, I just want this person off my team. So for them to treat Adolis Garcia like that and now see him become who he is, this is easily the worst trade on the list, because they didn't even get a prospect or anything for him, just cash. Also, do keep in mind that Adolis Garcia isn't a free agent until 2027. He would be age 34, so the Cardinals could have had a right fielder for the foreseeable future, cover all of his arbitration years, and not even have to worry about extending him long term, because at the end of it he would have been 34, but instead the Rangers are now reaping those benefits. On December 6, 2019, the Tampa Bay Rays acquired Hunter Renfroe, Xavier Edwards, and the player to be named was Esteban Quiros. They were traded to the San Diego Padres for Tommy Pham and Jake Cronenworth. So let's take a look at the winning side, the San Diego Padres. As you can see, Jake Cronenworth hit so well with the Padres that he was able to sign an extension. The reason why he was able to sign that extension, let's take a look at his numbers. He did great in the shortened season. Then he had back-to-back 4.2 WAR years, then followed by a down year when he moved to first base and only accumulated a 1.0 WAR. But either way, for a team as cost effective as the Rays to get rid of Jake Cronenworth when he hadn't even accumulated major league service time, this is definitely a miss on their part. Also, Tommy Pham was traded, and while he did contribute 1.1 WAR in 2021, his time with the Padres was somewhat forgettable. The most important part was Jake Cronenworth for the Padres. But when you take a look at what the Rays got in return, Hunter Renfroe, we take a look at this. He's been everywhere. He was released by Tampa Bay, and the reason why he was released by Tampa Bay, it was the shortened season, but he hit 156 with him with a 78 WRC plus. They were like, you know, we tried, it didn't work. Let's cut our losses. And with Xavier Edwards, they ended up not seeing the value in him in the long term and ended up trading him as well to the Miami Marlins for a few relief pitchers that if they become something, it's great for Tampa Bay, but it's not expected. And if you take a look at Xavier Edwards' stats, we can kind of see why. 2022, when they ended up trading him, he had a WRC plus of 84 in AAA. So to them, they're like, he may never become something, so they ended up getting rid of him. And then with Esteban Quiros, he ended up being traded for Harold Ramirez. But if we take a look at Esteban, as of right now, he's nothing to really write home about. He was traded to Philadelphia for cash considerations. That kind of tells you where he's at as a player. And where the Rays saved a little grace, it's still very lopsided and uneven, but trading Esteban Quiros for Harold Ramirez was a blessing in disguise, because Harold Ramirez has gone on to be their DH, and in the 2 years he's accumulated 3 WAR in total total, so 1.5 yearly average. That's good for a DH. He isn't going to bring any value defensively. He is a plague there. But to salvage this deal and at least have a DH, it's solid for the Rays. And maybe if Jake Cronenworth continues to not hit, maybe this trade would actually not deserve to be on this list. But as of right now, they lost a starting second baseman for the foreseeable future. And keep in mind, they didn't get Harold Ramirez until 2022. The Padres are already getting a return on investment by Jake Cronenworth as soon as 2020. Just lets you know, this is a deal that the Rays definitely would want back. And next up, on December 15, 2019, the Cleveland Guardians acquired Delino DeShields and Emmanuel Clase, and the Texas Rangers acquired starting pitcher Corey Kluber. So to give context to this deal, Corey Kluber had a down 2019 where he had an ERA over 5, and unfortunately for the Rangers, he was only able to give them 1 inning, and then they decided to decline his $18 million option, and Corey Kluber's been bouncing around since then. Meanwhile, if you take a look at this screen, Emmanuel Clase signed a 5-year, $20 million contract with the Cleveland Guardians because he has become an elite closer. And if we take a look at his stats since becoming a Guardian, he's been everything they've wanted and more. He's been a top 5 closer in baseball. They have him potentially signed until 2029. That is a massive W for the Guardians, especially knowing that they're a team that doesn't spend that much. To have him sign that long and it be affordable, it's a blessing for them. And the Guardians also acquired Delino DeShields, but in his season in Cleveland, he only provided 0.4 WAR value. It was to the point that they non-tendered him. They didn't even think he was worthy of the contract. So the main part of this deal was Emmanuel Clase becoming an elite closer, while Corey Kluber didn't contribute anything to the Rangers. This is definitely a move the Rangers would want to have back. Alright, so now we're in 2020s, and on November 9th, the Cleveland Guardians acquired Josh Naylor, Cal Quantrill, Gabriel Arias, Austin Hedges, Joey Cantillo, and Owen Miller. And the San Diego Padres acquired Mike Clevenger, Greg Allen, and Matt Waldron. Now, if you didn't know, this trade is more lopsided for the Guardians. And let's get into why. So Mike Clevenger unfortunately had to deal with Tommy John surgery. And then when he returned, he only provided 0.4 WAR for the Padres. As we all know, Tommy John, it takes some time to fully recover from Tommy John and potentially be your old self. Some may never be. Either way, the Padres did not get what they wanted when they traded for Mike Clevenger. And then Greg Allen ended up being traded to the Yankees after the end of the 2020 season. Greg Allen is outfield depth at this point. It's not worth me going into. And then if we take a look at Matt Waldron, he's nothing short of a mediocre reliever. He added 0.1 WAR, and that's literally 0.1 before replacement level. He's just a body to get some innings for you. Now, the main reason for why this trade is so unbalanced, Josh Naylor has really become a good player, and he's signed through 2026. If we take a look at his stats since becoming a regular, he has a WRC plus of 119 and 128. His value is brought a little bit down by his defense, but his defense is at first base. It's not like it's a premium position. This is definitely a hitter the Padres would love to have, as their lineup definitely struggles with depth. They have stars and then they have really bad hitters. Let's take a look at Cal Quantrill. If we take a look at 2023, he was just designated for assignment by the Guardians and traded for Cody Huff. But before he ended up not being solid, he did give the Guardians 2 good years with 1.8 WAR and 2.0 WAR. In 2022, he started all 32 games. He definitely was an overall plus for the Guardians, even though he's gone now. And then let's take a look at Gabriel Arias. He isn't even arbitration eligible until 2026. Coming into 2022, he was a top 100 prospect. Baseball Prospectic had him ranked number 57. Major League Baseball had him at 73. And Baseball America had him at 100. He got his first taste of big league action this year, and he definitely didn't bring it offensively, but he was a plus defender. We'll see going forward if he ends up becoming a quality starter, or maybe he ends up being a utility player. Him being a plus only adds cream to the crop because the Guardians already got the plus with Josh Naylor and Cal. Now Austin Hedges is the backup catcher. He spent 2 years with the Guardians and ended up giving him a total of negative WAR value. He's one of the worst hitters in baseball, but he does provide value defensively. Now Austin Hedges was the backup catcher. He ended up leaving the Guardians wins after providing negative WAR. He's not really important to this. Let's move on. And then Joey Cantillo projects as a back-end starter, and if we take a look at his stats, you can understand why. With a FIP over 5 in AAA, he definitely has things to work on. And then Owen Miller ended up being traded to the Milwaukee Brewers for cash consideration. Owen Miller is a bench player at this point. So the main thing from this trade is the Padres didn't get any value, while the Guardians have potentially gotten value from 2 players. It could potentially be 4 players. This trade was very lopsided, and I know the Padres wish they had it back. Now on December 28, 2020, the Tampa Bay Rays acquire Luis Patino, Francisco Mejia, Blake Hunt, and Cole Wilcox, while the San Diego Padres acquire Blake Snell. Now we just did a deal where the Padres lost. We're about to talk about a deal where they won, and they won big. Because as we all know, Blake Snell just won the NL Cy Young. The 3 years that the Padres got from Blake Snell, he was everything they wanted and more. And he is a pending free agent, and he's most likely going to leave. But the Padres would do this deal over and over again. And the reason why, let's go into what the Rays got back in return. We're looking at Luis Patino. We see his transactions list. This man bounces around between the minors and majors. He ended up being traded to the Chicago White Sox for cash. And we take a look at his stats, you know why. He's not really someone worth talking about. Then we go into Francisco Mejia. He was the biggest piece in this deal, but he did not live up to the hype. So much so that the Rays just released him this year. And he doesn't even bring value defensively. If you don't bring value defensively as a catcher and you can't hit, you are not going to find a home in Major League Baseball. So Mejia was a big bust for the Rays. Now Blake Hunt was a 2nd round pick by the San Diego Padres, and at one point had projection, but if we take a look over the course of his time with the Rays, he ended up never shining, to the point they ended up trading him this offseason to the Seattle Mariners for Tatum Levins. And Tatum Levins wasn't even a top 48 prospect for the Rays according to Fangraphs. So that shows you they didn't get the value they needed for Blake Hunt. Then we take a look at Cole Wilcox. Cole Wilcox does project as a number 4 or number 5 starter, and he's currently the Rays' 13th ranked prospect according to Fangraphs. But if we actually take a look at what he did this season, he definitely has things that he needs to work on with a 4.92 FIP. This trade has been a disaster for the Rays, and the Rays are usually the team that does this, so for them to lose, not only like this, but to not get value out of any of these players, that is such a miss on their part, because Blake Snell literally just won the Cy Young. So this trade was massively lopsided for the Rays. And also on December 8th, 2020, we have another San Diego Padres deal. The Chicago Cubs acquire Zach Davies, Reginald Preciado, Yesin Santana, Owen Cassey, and Ismael Mena, while the San Diego Padres acquire Yu Darvish and Victor Caratini. Now, Yu Darvish was signed through 2023. He did end up signing a new deal with the Padres. I'm not factoring that new deal or anything about that into this trade because that has no context with it. But when he became a San Diego Padre, he's given him 3 good years. This past season, his ERA did creep up a little bit. But either way, 2.8 WAR, 4.1 WAR, and 2.4 WAR. You're getting that from a starting pitcher. You are absolutely happy with that. And then with Victor Caratini, he ended up just being a backup catcher for him. He did not provide any value. It was actually negative. So they traded him to Milwaukee, where he's kind of refound his footing. The main part was Yu Darvish, not Victor. Now we take a look at this Cubs return. They got Zach Davies, who literally gave them a 5.78 ERA, 0.0 WAR. He was literally a replacement level player. And when his contract was up, the Cubs chose not to bring him back, obviously. And then Reginald Preciado projects as a bench player. If we take a look at his stats, he'll be lucky to get to the upper minors at this point because he is not hitting well. Then we have Yesin Santana, who projects as organizational depth. He's actually hitting a little bit better than Reginald, but these players are not sought after prospects. But the players so far that could potentially make this trade not lopsided, as of now it's lopsided, but Owen Cassey has been the best best piece so far. He was a second-round pick for the Padres. With an overall grade of 55, he projects as an above-average regular. If he does become that, then maybe this trade isn't as lopsided and it doesn't deserve to be on this list. But until Owen actually becomes that, this trade is very lopsided for the Cubs. Because if we take a look at Ismail Mania, he also is projected as organizational depth at this point. And taking a look at his stats, we understand why. And trading Yu Darvish, they lost all that value and they hope to regain it with Owen. And if Owen doesn't regain it, this trade is very lopsided for the Cubs. So now we are in 2021. And on February 1st, the St. Louis Cardinals acquired Nolan Arenado from the Colorado Rockies for Austin Gomber, Mateo Gil, Eleris Montero, Tony Locey, and Jake Summers. And also keep in mind that the Colorado Rockies were sending money in this deal as well. But if we take a look at it, the Rockies are essentially eating 10 to 12 million a year on this deal. And let's take a look at Nolan Arenado's stats since becoming a Cardinal. He had a 4 WAR season, a 7.2 WAR season, but this past season was a little bit of a down year for him with 2.6 WAR and 107 WRC plus. If he continues to be on a downtrend, maybe this trade won't be as lopsided, but I doubt it because he's already accumulated 13 WAR in 3 years. And when you look at what the Rockies have gotten so far, Austin Gomber hasn't had a year below 4.50 ERA. He had 1.3 WAR the first year, but the past 2 seasons he's been below 1 WAR. He has an ERA over 5. He is an afterthought. Then we look at Mateo Gil. He was deemed so unvaluable to them that they didn't even protect him in the Rule 5 draft, and now he's a New York Met. If we take a look at his stats, you can see why. He had a 98 WRC plus and high A at age 21. They were like, you know, enough's enough. We don't need to keep him. And then with Montero and his time up with the MLB so far, he has a negative 0.7 WAR. So he's currently not someone providing value for the Rockies either. And then we take a look at Tony Locey. He ended up being traded for future considerations to the Tampa Bay Rays, as he had an ERA over 12 in Colorado AA. And then Jake Summers. He's 26 and he's still in the complex. I'm going to be honest with you. For them to be paying money to the Cardinals and getting not one valuable player back, this is one of the most lopsided trades, man. It's just, I don't know what the hell's up with the Rockies scouting department, because not one player is providing value for you, for who was a franchise player for you in Nolan Arenado. You should have just not extended him if you were going to do this. But not only did you do this trade, then you signed Chris Bryant. Sorry I'm going on a tangent, but the Rockies are just so stupid. I just don't get it. So another trade on February 6, 2021. The Oakland A's acquired Elvis Andrus, $13.5 million in cash, and Aramis Garcia, while the Texas Rangers acquired Chris Davis, Jonah Heim, and Dane Acker. Now let's take a look at Chris Davis. As you can see, he was released on June 13, 2021 by the Texas Rangers and ended up going back to the Oakland A's. He ended up accumulating a negative 0.4 WAR. He was not what the Rangers wanted and they quickly cut their ties. But the reason why this trade is on this list, we are going to be taking a look at Jonah Heim. He isn't a free agent until 2027 at age 32. He's right now entering arbitration, but he's an all-star catcher for the Texas Rangers who just went on to win the World Series. He just had a 4.1 WAR season, a 2.7 before that, and his first year he was kind of getting accumulated and had 1. He's going to be the Rangers catcher for the foreseeable future, and I know the A's would rather have him. And then if we take a look at Dane Acker, he is currently the 15th ranked prospect for the Rangers. He projects as a back-end starter. If that changes, I'll let you know. The main piece of this was Jonah Heim. And if we take a look at Elvis Andrus, he ended up having a good first year with Oakland with a 1.5 WAR. He ended up being released by Oakland and latched on to the White Sox, where he started hitting a little better. I do know that it shows that Elvis Andrus was acquiring high WAR. This was mainly because of his defense And for a team like the A's in 2021, they were trying to go for it. And then in 2022, they were like, well, let's take a step back and trade everyone. And then they were like, well, we didn't trade Andrews at the deadline. Let's just release him. So yes, Andrews did provide value, but because Oakland is so short-sighted and they didn't know if they actually wanted to go for it, then they actually didn't and took a step back and released him. They could have had a starting catcher for the foreseeable future, but instead they were short-sighted. They have nothing to look forward to from that deal. As we take a look at Aramis Garcia, he accumulated a negative WAR with Oakland, and then he was a free agent and signed a minor league contract with the Reds. He's organizational depth. The reason why this trade is on it, the A's could have been having an all-star catcher for years to come, but instead they traded him for an aging shortstop who then in return ended up releasing a year and a half later when the A's started rebuilding. It's just the A's did not have a concrete plan, clearly. And the reason why I say that, they are the next up on this list because on July 28th, 2021, the Oakland A's acquired Starling Marte for Jesus Luzardo. This was a win-now move. The A's were competing, but my God, was this so short-sighted. While the year Starling Marte was with the A's, he had a 5.3 WAR year. He was very elite and very good. I understand trying to go for it, but if you're gonna go for it, you need to stay consistently going for it and actually spend money on these players and commit to them. The Oakland A's did the complete opposite. Starling Marte ended up leaving and going to the Mets. Meanwhile, Jesus Luzardo now is one of the best young pitchers in baseball. He had a 2.2 WAR first year, and then this past year he had a 3.7. He is really becoming a high-end starter. This is someone the A's definitely could have had and helped jumpstart their next rebuild. My issue with the A's is if you're gonna go all in, then you need to commit to those people that you just went all in with. They went all in and traded their farm system and didn't get the equal value in return, in my opinion. And the reason why I'm saying this, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, because 2 of the last 3 trades involved the A's, and they are the ones being taken advantage of. The Oakland A's, now Las Vegas A's, completely fumbled a great team. They completely fumbled a great team by having no direction. When they saw they were good, they were like, oh, let's go all in. Then when that all in didn't work, they're like, oh, let's rebuild. Before we get into that trade, I do have another trade to talk about. This one being on March 13th, 2022. The Minnesota Twins acquired Sonny Gray and Francis Peguero, while the Cincinnati Reds acquired Chase Petty. Now, if we take a look at Sonny Gray, he signed an extension January 21st, 2019. Essentially, the Twins were trading for 2 years of Sonny Gray, and he was a free agent in 2024. And we are in the future. He signed with the St. Louis Cardinals, so the Twins are going to get a comp pick. And if we take a look at his stats, he had a 2.4 WAR year, then a 5.3 WAR. Sonny Gray was really elite in 2023. And before we get into the Reds return, let's look at Francis Peguero. He is organizational depth, and looking at his stats, you can wonder why. He spent the majority of his year in AA, and his FIP was 5.82. He's not someone to talk about. Now, Chase Petty, according to Fangraphs, is the 5th ranked prospect and has a 45 future grade value on MLB.com. He is the Reds' 6th prospect, but projected an overall grade of 50. So Chase Petty is anywhere in between a number 4 and number 5 starter. But given the fact the Twins got 1 good year and 1 elite year from Sonny Gray, and they get a comp pick, which is around the 2nd round pick, and all they are losing is a potential number 4, number 5 starter, the Reds definitely did not do well in this return, and the Twins would do this deal 10 times out of 10. And especially if the person they drafted this comp pick ends up better than Chase Petty. Now, if Chase Petty ends up becoming a great pitcher, will this trade be as lopsided? No. But until that happens, and the fact that he's not projected until 2025, this trade for right now is definitely lopsided. Now on to the last 2 trades, and I already said earlier they are the Oakland A's. If you know baseball, you should know what deals I'm talking about. So the Oakland A's acquired Christian Pache, Shea Langeliers, Joey Estes, and Ryan Cusick, and Atlanta Braves acquired Matt Olson. So when the Braves made this trade, Matt Olson had 2 years of control left, but they signed him to an 8-year, $168 million extension. The A's never were really going to do that. That's why why they traded him, but they were supposed to get a great return. That was the most important thing. And Matt Olson, since becoming a Brave, he had a 3.2 WAR year, and then he just had a season where he finished top 4 in MVP voting, and he had 54 home runs. He was an elite first baseman. So in order for the A's to kind of get a return on investment, they were going to have to get some good prospects. Christian Pache, as you can see, he isn't even on the A's anymore. In 2022, he was up and down from the minors, and then they traded him before the season, but he was one of the main pieces of the deal. But unfortunately, Christian is projecting as a 4th outfielder, not the top prospect starting center fielder that the Oakland A's traded for. So Christian Pache and Shea Langeliers were the 2 highly coveted pieces in this trade, and so far with Shea Langeliers in his 2 seasons, he has a .1 WAR and .7 WAR. Shea Langeliers was a 1st round pick, and he's supposed to be the starting catcher for years to come for the Padres, but unless he does a complete 180 as a player, there's no way that the A's are going to get the return on investment from this deal. But as we see with Joey Estes, he had a 5.23 ERA in AAA. When he went to the MLB, he had a 7.20. He was good in AA, but he's looking like someone that's going to be a back-end starter, and that's not something to write home about when you traded away one of the best first basemen in baseball. And then lastly, Ryan Cusick, he is projected as organizational depth, and he spent majority of his year in AA, where he had a 4.77 ERA. So yes, to have this return for Matt Olson, it is just disgusting. And this is where some people were wondering, were the A's intentionally tanking so they could move the team to Vegas? And judging off this return, how could you say no? Now, the last lopsided trade occurred on March 16th, 2022. The Toronto Blue Jays acquire Matt Chapman, while the Oakland A's acquire Gunnar Hoglund, Kevin Smith, Zach Logue, and Kirby Snead. Matt Chapman, just like with Matt Olson, he had 2 more years of control. The Blue Jays gave him a 2-year, $25 million extension to cover those years. While he was a Blue Jay, he had a 4.2 WAR year and a 3.5. That's a good above average player. But the issue is the return of the Oakland A's got. Gunnar Hoglund is projected as a back end starter currently, and in AA, he just had a 5.40 ERA, and in the league that he pitched the most innings, he had a 6.32 FIP. As of right now, he doesn't look to be a plus piece. Kevin Smith was so up and down that the A's just non-tendered him on November 17th of this year. We take a look at his stats. He has accumulated negative 0.6 WAR. He has not been valuable. This was a trade for Matt Chapman. Then we take a look at Zach Logue. He ended up being designated for assignment by the A's and picked up by Detroit. We take a look at his numbers. We see why. He had a 6.79 ERA, negative 0.4 WAR. Another head scratcher. And last but not least, we take a look at Kirby Snead. He's another person that's been up and down from the minors with the A's. When we take a look at his numbers, you'll see why. In 2022, he had a 5.84 ERA with a negative WAR. And in his past season, he accumulated 0.0 WAR. So far in this Matt Chapman trade, they have gotten negative value, nothing even positive. So for the A's to lose Jonah Heim, Jesus Luzardo, then trade away Matt Olson for nothing and Matt Chapman for nothing, they have damned their franchise for years to come with these moves. So if you've gotten to this point after seeing all of these lopsided trades, I wondered if you noticed a trend that some of these teams were on the benefit of these lopsided trades, and they also were the ones at the expense of these lopsided trades. It lets you know even the most smartest organizations can make mistakes or make moves that they would live to regret. We all know the exception is the Athletics, who kind of just like punted their team. But either way, y'all let me know in the comment section. Was there a trade that I potentially missed that was lopsided? Do you think one of these trades that I deemed lopsided wasn't as lopsided as I said? What trade do you feel was the worst of them all? For me, I'm either going to say the Adolis Garcia one or Nolan Arenado, because to pay money to a team and don't even get any return on investment is crazy, but also to get rid of Adolis Garcia and all you got was money was crazy as well. But y'all let me know in the comment section which one you think was the worst. But as you know, with Paint the Black Baseball, I'm going to give you consistent analysis, so make sure to subscribe, turn the notification bell for all my videos so you can like and participate in the comment section. I hope you have a great day.